God, I am finding it so difficult to have a shred of enthusiasm towards this episode. When I first saw the title, I thought Chibnall was nodding to the Sex Pistols song Anarchy in the UK. But apparently I must have missed the memo because the title had me thinking that the UK would be infested with spiders this week, instead of just one in a random flat, one in Nan's house and the rest in a hotel. We didn't really get to see the scope of the spider outbreak, and the other misleading aspect of the title is the Arachnids part. Why no scorpions, I am tempted to ask, and then I remember the last time they tried that out. My point is that I originally thought to myself whilst watching this, hey, them spiders don't look half bad. And then it dawned on me later on that spiders in the UK doesn't quite have the same ring to it. I just think they could have stepped outside the safe and comfy option of CG spiders and maybe spice things up a bit. Why not throw some ticks in there? Or go crazy with the designs of these spiders instead of just having them all look the same. I am gently reminded by the nagging voice in my head that Doctor Who has never had a decent budget and probably never will, so the least they could have done was title this episode a bit more honestly. But was it all bad? Does it really deserve the lowest rating for a Doctor Who episode on IMDb? Let's take a closer look at this latest episode of Doctor Who, which I'm retitling Spiders in Sheffield. So, the opening scene really doesn't have much purpose in being here. We're off to a good start. We have Jack Robertson, the manager of the hotel, trying to wriggle out of a potential scandal that his colleague/niece's wife is trying to warn him about. In the nick of time, Yasmin's mum comes in proclaiming she's the manager, but Jack fires her for leaving several rooms covered in spiders' webs. I mention this only because she gets fired again later on when Yaz comes to pick her up, leaving me wondering why they even needed to have her in this scene whatsoever. Surely you need to fire the cleaners, if anybody. Then we see the TARDIS flying through hyperspace for a bit, despite they could have just slotted the opening titles here and have them land back in Sheffield for... I don't know about anybody else, but I thought the Doctor became really annoying this week. They initially thrust the Doctor's fear of being lonely on an audience that has already become severely accustomed to this theme by now. Not to mention that as soon as she's invited in for tea, she transforms into an excitable child who's been offered a large bag of sweets. Never been for tea at your houses. The Doctor claims that she's attempting to make small talk, but it's not like she's directing her dialogue at anybody other than her friends. This father character doesn't make it further than being a paranoid man who can't cook. Neither of these aspects actually amount to anything in the episode either. Then the sister wants a bit of Ryan to herself, which makes me wish that the episode had remained consistent with the previous one. Remember those little bits where they implied that Ryan and Yaz could potentially be a thing? Well, this week it's the Doctor and Yaz that could potentially be a thing.
I want more of the universe. More time with you.
Maybe they're just testing the waters with each other sexually. I'm actually looking forward to when Graham gets lumped in there too. I will say though, I did like Graham returning to his home without Grace, and it was effective. They established her inclusion in the episode through the editing. This haunting presence of hers definitely sent more chills down my spine than any of the spiders did, but we'll get onto that shortly. The Doctor and Ryan then go and collect the uncollected package from Yaz's neighbour. You know how I was saying last week about the Doctor getting up to shady business and nobody seems to bat an eyelid? Well, it gets even worse this week. Kids, if you think your neighbour is keeping a parcel from you, the best thing to do is break in. Also, if you happen to come across a giant mutant spider, garlic and vinegar will do the job just fine.
Just like Hannibal! Just like Hannibal!
I found it amazing how passive this Jane character was. She is totally okay with a group of strangers picking the lock on her friend's flat, with one of them continually pointing the obvious out to her.
How's out?
This container, only a spider. Big spider, but only a spider. That spider in Anna's flat was way bigger than a normal household spider.
Then, after seeing her colleague's corpse and an overly large spider, what does she do? She shows these people she has only just met her research on spiders.
Everything we do here is secure.
with the exception of our data handling. Just when I thought I was getting bored of this episode, Ryan too seems to have very little interest in what's going on. Then Jane shows the Doctor this map of increased spider activity over the course of 3 months. Given that there's notes of conspiracy flying around in the plot, you'd have thought this science lab, or even the waste disposal company they merely mention, would have made more of an effort to cover up this spider scandal. Moving on, I found this Jack Robertson guy to be totally unbelievable and a ridiculous caricature of Donald Trump. Let's not beat around the bush here. It's clear that this guy was written to be like him and is basically used as a verbal punching bag for all the women around him to take jabs at him for being Trump. I thought it'd be pretty funny if he was, say, Trump's #1 fan or something, but when they mention the IRL president to him, he reacts in the exact same way he has reacted to everything else in the story, with very little interest. Anyway, Yaz and her mother reunite when all of a sudden the owner and his minion Kevin point a gun at them for not leaving the premises. If Yaz wasn't a police officer, I'd find this whole situation quite believable. However, instead of Yaz putting up a fight against people who have clearly broken the law by pointing a gun at them, she just goes along with whatever the man with the gun wants. Again, I can hear echoes of the previous review, with these characters seemingly unable to tell when they could be in some sort of danger and just going along with it.
Why does nobody ever just go to the police?
Fortunately, Jack isn't quite in the mood for dominance right now and goes for his scheduled bathroom break, which again has no relevance whatsoever aside from establishing this.
But a spider in the bath, a spider in the bath, a creepy crawly spider in the bath.
Then our huge group of characters are ready to explore and defeat the spiders. However, I definitely think we're a few characters too many now, and it definitely shows in the following scenes. We don't need 2 spider experts first and foremost, so Jane shouldn't really be here. We could have also cut off Ryan and Graham from being here, as they don't have any integral ties to the hotel and would have been more useful acting as viewpoints for the audience to see how infested the city of Sheffield had become. Instead, they are basically just bait for the spiders inside the hotel. The Doctor initially sends them on a task to capture a spider, which literally amounts to nothing in the end. It just seemed like an excuse to throw in a few jump scares and show off the spiders. But of course, it is close to Halloween, you idiot! More importantly though, Ryan's dad sent him a letter this week telling him that they can live as a family now.
Proper family. Proper family. He's not proper. Proper special.
But that all gets shrugged off because at the end of the episode, Ryan's going to be flying off in space and time, and currently the mother spider is in the room with them. It's amazing how poor of a job they also did editing the massive spider into this scene too. We see it latch off the ceiling, then we cut to the reaction shot from the pair, and suddenly it's on all fours chasing them on the floor. You seriously couldn't have just had another shot of it twirling down like the one we saw in the flat? Then our characters land themselves in the kitchen trying to figure out what to do with the spiders. Sadly, Jack needs another formal introduction and the Doctor confuses him for Ed Sheeran. It amazes me that she is aware that people talk about Ed Sheeran round about now, but also, how could you not know what he's famous for if he's that renowned to you? And of course she had to go and say it 4 times as well.
Are you Ed Sheeran? Is he Ed Sheeran? Everyone talks about Ed Sheeran roundabout now, roundabout now, roundabout now, roundabout now, roundabout now, roundabout now.
No! The team then split up and Najda, or Yaz's mum, seems to suddenly have a spurt of courage and say no to the big man. I was a bit surprised in the beginning when she proclaimed she was the general manager of this hotel and shied away like a little child after being fired. Now that she's got a bit of female backup though, she's suddenly all bite and trousers. I was willing to give this character the benefit of the doubt at first. Yeah, some spiders attacked, fair enough, you have a bit of adrenaline in you, but right here she seems to have completely forgotten this factor in trying to care a bit for her child. They then go to the basement where the Doctor makes some stupid comments about breakfast. It kind of bugs me that most of the dialogue that comes out of her mouth nowadays seems to be for mimetic purposes more than anything else. Imagine all the people sat at home with a smartphone in their hands ready to tweet out the latest soundbite from the episode. Hashtag I eat danger for breakfast. Hashtag I call people dude now. We're already 4 episodes in and she's still figuring herself out? Usually the Doctor gets over that nonsense after the pilot. Get this though, when they actually get down to the epicenter of the problem, the 5 of them just talk. We don't see the catastrophic effect of the toxic waste, or any spiders down here for that matter either. There's just more berating and explaining, and it's really bloody boring. Don't get me wrong, I worry about waste all the time. It's a huge damn problem. It's nice that Doctor Who is pointing the finger at giant corporations and waste management programs for doing a terrible job of keeping pollution at bay, let alone the plastic problem too. But the way this is done is so bland, and I can't believe how empty and tensionless this scene ended up being. After that, the entire group reunites in the kitchen and establish that Nadi Nadi Naja isn't important to the story at all.
Naturally, you were never the link.
Then they go to Jack's panic room, and possibly the cringiest line in the history of the show comes out of his mouth.
What's wrong with you people? What is wrong with this country? Why don't you do what normal people do? Get a gun, shoot things like a civilized person.
But the more ridiculous part comes when they establish the plan. Lure the spiders up to the panic room, keep them isolated, and then dispose of them humanely. How do you guys know there's going to be enough space for all of them in the panic room? The Doctor also claims they're living, breathing organisms that deserve respect. As if the Doctor couldn't get more progressive. She's a vegan now too, guys! As though the cringe levels weren't sky high at this point, we get another Call of Duty moment from Ryan. Whilst I appreciate the sentiment, Ryan having a more peaceful approach to taking care of things, my forehead was magnetically attracted to my desk at this point. How can the sound from the panic room be so loud that you can hear it in the basement and Ryan's dialogue be audible? Finally, any plans of me diving into the world of grime music have now been stopped dead in their tracks because of this segment. What a terrible song! Then we get to the scene that I bet you were all waiting for my verdict on. Before they start spraying the spider with peppermint tea, Jane states the spider's suffocating because of her size. The humane thing, you would have thought, would be to kill it and alleviate its suffering. Well, this is exactly what happens, and I don't have much of a problem with it. The idea of mercy killing is interesting because I think for the Doctor it's a last resort option. If there was another way of handling this situation, sure, it could have been done, and I see the Doctor's point. It was interesting too that she didn't really have a plan for dealing with the mother spider, which I think is why she reacts this way. She's not angry at Jack, she's angry at herself for not having the foresight he had. We also have to remember though that this scene has this really sad music behind it in an attempt to make us feel for this suffering creature, which didn't work on me in the slightest. It also annoyed me that all the British members of the group were so opposed to what Jack did. Anybody who has had a pet that needs putting down would understand what he did. So the fact that all of them were just standing there thinking, "Oh, I can't believe he did that," seemed really odd to me. So then, the big one's been taken care of. What about the rest of the spiders? You know, the ones around the city, the huge load that are locked up in the safe room? Oh yeah, they just get forgotten about. We don't see them getting taken care of humanely, so presumably the spider problem hasn't actually gone away in Sheffield. There's nothing else to say. I think I've said enough already. So, did it suck? Okay, there were a couple of things I liked. Take the moral ambiguity over mercy killings. I liked that the Doctor wasn't in control of that situation. Graham's bits and even his monologue thing at the end were very nice, so thematically it kinda works, but jeez Louise. Everything else just seemed to leave me utterly bewildered and disappointed. The problem doesn't get resolved, the lack of vision, the Doctor being annoying, like Matt Smith annoying, the overload of forgettable characters and the cringe fest that was this episode leaves me wondering if it is worse than the Ghost Monument. Nope. I think it's just as bad. I give Arachnids in the UK a 2 out of 10. Thanks for watching. I am embracing the hate this week, guys. Tell me how I'm wrong about this episode in the comments below. I do appreciate the corrections that you all make on my behalf. Apologies I couldn't quite make this episode any earlier this week, but it's here now, and next week's video will be out on Wednesday. I also look forward to chatting with you all about tonight's episode on the Discord server. Link is in the description.